Hi, my friends. How are you guys? I think
Hey
your mics are
guys,
still. Yeah. Hi. Are you guys okay?
Okay.
yeah, okay. How are you?
Great. I'm fine as well. So, we're here today for our second day to study the book, Paul and Stephen. We have loads of interesting things to talk about the book today, amazing teachings, a couple of harsh examples lived by the personages. Yes. And since we have loads of things to talk about, Nora will bring us some prayer before we start so we can focus, get more relaxed, get connected with spirituality.
All right. Dear Mother, Father God, thank you once again for this beautiful evening gathering here tonight with beautiful friends and spiritual family. We want to ask for enlightenment, for discernment, and most importantly, that we grasp these lessons this evening to help us move forward, to change the world starting within and out. And as for Brother João, for Daniel, and for everyone watching, myself included, just drops of light for all of us. Let's say this prayer: Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of death. With that, we ask permission to begin. So be it.
So pretty, so beautiful. Thank you so much. I love this prayer. Um, so we're still in chapter one, in the first part of the book. The chapter one has the title "Afflicted Hearts." Um, we were seeing those amazing characters last week, and we're in this part where we're seeing Josiel trying to convince his father to not go talk to those Romans authorities. But as we've seen, Jokedab is really harsh and he's pretty sure about what he should do. So we're gonna keep talking a little bit more about that. Licinius and his soldiers, they were, as we've seen, listening to people reclamations, and they were being nice to people and asking them if they had anything to complain about. And as we've seen, Jokedab had a couple of things he wanted to complain about. He believed he had rights to be that were not being respected, and he was very, very, very determined to talk to the legate. So we're in this part where Jason is trying to convince his father. We are seeing here a very interesting conversation. Jason started to reminding his father that the Hebrews had a really tough history, and we've seen that in the Old Testament, and Jason is talking exactly about that. He's saying that centuries ago, that's he's saying, pharaohs took their cruelty so far with their forebears that the boys of their people were murdered at birth. It's a really interesting thing here, and we're going to see that later in the book. Jaziel knew all about the law, this Jewish law, the Old Testament, the Torah. He really, really was into that, and he knew all about that. And it's interesting mentioning that he was referring to the Bible's book of Exodus, chapter 1, verses 15 and 16. This text is really interesting, and that's exactly what he's talking about. Verse 15 brings this. The king of Egypt said to Hebrew midwives, when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that baby is a boy, kill him. That's what Jaziel is talking about to his father. So remembering him that they had suffered a lot. Jaziel, he went on saying that all that suffer that their people had to go through was allowed by God so that Israel could recognize her divine mission and the most atrocious suffering. It's very pretty. He's a very inspirational young man. Jokedad did consider his sons talking to him that day. He liked those words, but he said that farthing by farthing, justice must be done, and nothing would persuade him otherwise. And we're gonna see what happens. Um, so he tells them, Jaziel and Abigail, that the next day he would purchase his rights. He would talk to the legate. Um, when he said that, it's really interesting. The book tells us that when he said that, Jaziel was animated by sudden inspiration and said that they should see what God's word would tell them about Jokadab's decision. So let's open the Bible, see what it brings for us. So he opened the sacred text at random, as the custom of the time, and we still do this, at least here in Brazil. I don't know if you guys do that there. And even Spiritists have this custom of doing that with the Gospel according to Spiritism, or even the Spirit's book. It's really interesting. See what the Spirit brings for us. And he got the book of Proverbs, a really interesting book. And the phrase is exactly this: My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, nor resent his rebuke. For the Lord disciplines those who he loves, as a father disciplines the son in whom he delights. So it's a really clear message. But Joquedat got really surprised when he heard that, but he did not change his mind. He was too sure about what he should do. And he said that he acknowledged the warning of the writings, and he says, I will not resign myself to injustice, and as I have decided, I shall take my claim to the relevant authorities. And when he says that, Jason only says, God helps us. They were feeling that something terrible was coming. Um, then the following morning, the book brings us what was happening in the city, brings some images about the city. They say that there were unusual activity, and the book always is bringing us information about all the dirty things that were happening in the city, that weird and very dense material vibe. And Shukadab crossed that huge square, very sure about what he was doing. And he went to see Licinius Minucius. And then in this part of the book, we have very strong images. When he came there, he got there. He saw that there were a couple of men who were in the same mental attitude as him, trying to make up for his rights, chasing those rights that they believed they had. And he saw that those men were being received one by one. They were taking notes, and they were almost everybody were talking about those expropriations that we've seen. About their possessions. A patrician took notes of all his words, and now I'm referring to Jokadab's. He was led back inside to wait with the others, so they would bring a solution to him. However, as the others were called by name to settle their accounts with the provincial government, Jokadab noticed that the ancient building was becoming too silent. He noticed that there was something not normal there. What was happening? And Jokadab was called, and he got really, really surprised because his case had been denied. What his kids were feeling actually happened. Nothing good could come from those patricians. The sentence said, I'm going to transfer here, that the imperial legate had resolved to order the confiscation of the alleged property of Jokadab ben Jared, granting him 3 days to vacate the land. So not only his claim was denied, he would lose the place they were living in. This is very sad. At that time, Jokedab lost his ground. He was really, really surprised. And it's really sad because as we've been reading about him, we see that he was actually believing that he would take something good from them. It's very sad. He could not believe that his act of demonstrating that faith in justice had turned up like that. So he tried to humiliate himself in front of the quaestor. He tried begging for mercy, but the Licinius responded in a very arrogant way. He said this: "Away with you! There's no arguing with an inferior decision." At this point, Shokadep lost his mind and he started raising his voice and trying to argue with them, questioning them, and he called them criminals. But when he lost his mind, he already remembered his children that were at home waiting for him. He got calmer and he tried again to humiliate himself, to beg for mercy, tell those authorities that he had two kids that were at home waiting for him, that needed him to take care of them. But there was no mercy. The legate was even colder. He ordered a soldier to remove Jokedab and give him 10 lashes. Very, very cruel. On his knees, and Jokedab endured his punishment. And when it was over, he got up and staggered to the sunny square under those large buildings, beautiful buildings. And he got mockery from everybody that had watched the scene. The book brings us the information that he never had felt such intense despair. This part is really, really sad at the book. When he looked the city, he felt like he was submerged in one of the most hateful swamps in the world, among the sins that the prophets of his people never tired condemning. Suddenly he again remember those kids, and this is really spiritual, and the spiritual plane calling those dear kids that he had, and felt profound sorrow that the verdict would cause them. He was very concerned about them. He remembered Jaziel trying to, not trying, begging him not to go, trying to convince him. Jaziel got at his knees, trying to convince his father. And now the exhortation of the scriptures resounded more intensely. My son, as we've seen before, the text that they open in the Bible, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline. Those words were coming to his mind much, much, much more strong. Unthinkable mental torment suffocated his soul. This is very sad. Dominated by bitter thoughts, he approached the beloved place where he had built his family nest. And now, and Daniel will continue this story for us.
Thank you, João. Good night, everybody. So we have to understand and always recall all the storyline of Jochebed. He lost his wife, he was arrested, and lost his properties to Licinius years before. So Licinius comes back, and once more he is humiliated, he is deceived, and once more expropriated. And he heads back to his house, to his family, where he finds a place to put himself together, to feel stronger once more spiritually, psychologically. But he is also, and now we can understand uh, this bitterness that is troubling him. And he goes back to his house as he thinks about the divine laws and everything he has studied throughout his life. Um, and all he feels, all that contradiction, he has he finds a way to excuse his acts, what he's up to at that moment. So next to his house, there's Licinius's property, and he has this clique, this terrible idea, and also the book describes at in a moment of weakness, he allows his mind to take place to terrible temptations. This is a part of him, but also spiritual influence, bad influence as well. So he sets fire to a dry thicket in that part, and he was not thinking clearly. He was deeply troubled, angry, seeking for revenge. He wanted really to fight back, and he set fire to that thicket, thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna take give him some trouble to deal with. I'm gonna make him have some trouble to do to solve." But the fire goes spreading, goes on, getting stronger, getting bigger. He goes back to his house and comforts himself with Abigail, his daughter, and waits for Giselle to come back and have a conversation with him. He was willing to hide from his son and daughter everything he did, his bad decision, uh, and he starts to hear all the fire and all the problems the fire was causing. Thermal baths were along with the house of Licinius is damaged, gets damaged with the fire, and many people start gather around to fight the fire, all the fire, including Giselle. So Giselle comes back to home with injured hands, all covered in dirty, in ashes, and immediately Jahadab sees the size, the gravity uh, of his actions. His decisions were tragic, and let me seek my notes. um, okay, so he can see Giselle in that state. He can no longer hide his guilt, so he reveals that Caesar's legate took what they had left instead of giving anything back. This sad part that João uh, just told us, he confessed to his son and daughter, and they clearly show a different level of comprehension, of understanding all the scriptures, the sacred scriptures, and they calm down his own father. He is with a heart so hurt, so revolted, so angry, and he finds Jesus and Abigail recalling another problem. It's oh, I'm sorry, Abigail and Jesus they remember to their father in order to calm him down, that God is the Father that always take care of the downtrodden of the earth. And this, imagine how deeply confused and ashamed Jahadab feels at that moment. And he has to confess one more thing. He cannot hide this one secret, this big secret. He's not only lost all that they had left, but set fire to Licinius' properties. And that brings the consternation of Giselle. Abigail starts to cry, and it's interesting. So much control they have over their emotions, and so deeply they know the divine laws. They have this self control. They are troubled. They are worried. They're gonna lose everything, but they have their spirit in place. In all the guilt that Jahadeb brought upon them is to break a divine law. It's their true concern. He break the law. He seek the revenge, and that is wrong, and that is what he should be concerned about. So this they immediately think this is what brings us trouble, and we will have to go through harsh moments to compensate this bad action. Uh, so Jahadab is so angry that he starts to argue with Giselle, using some questions like, "How can I love my enemy? How can I love such a bad man as this Roman question?" Well, and this is interesting because it makes part of our lives, and this is what we ask to ourselves uh, almost on a daily basis. Uh, how can we love our enemies? How can we love who who hurts us? Well, and the answer is not simple, it's not precise or short, but we can understand that we are evolving spiritually, and we will through many times practicing and trying to forgive and to love. One day, one beautiful day, we'll we will be able to do that, to accomplish this complicated task, this divine sense of life, this perspective over a bigger existence and purpose of living. So what we have to keep in mind, if we can do that or not, is that we can't reach any accomplish any objective if we don't practice. We have to practice, and we have to forgive our weakness and our mistakes and move on and keep on trying. So in this fire, two men died. These men were Caius and Rufilius. They were servants of Licinius. What happens is they are Licinius likes them, and They were very severely injured fighting the fire, and this is one more concern for this family. Licinius is not gonna be just angry about uh, the fire and the jeopardy of his possessions, but also his servants were injured and they could not, they wouldn't be able to work for a certain time. So the clean conscience of Jorgadebs were then treated by a guilt and sorrow from now on, and they saw no other alternative than waiting for the punishment. They chose to have the courage to face what was coming towards them, sent by Licinius' authority. And and the part I read is ends with them chanting the Psalm 23, and in their language is a chant and must be beautiful. I don't know. I got curious reading this book. I'll maybe I'll see if I can find it on the internet. Now our friend Nora can take the word. Thank you.
That's beautiful. And I know they do have, I found two versions of songs, Psalm 23. But it's funny because it's a male voice and I can't sing. It's very hard. I would have to practice. Never say never, but I would need to practice. But it's beautiful. I'm sure they do have. Joan, would you like to say something?
I'm just the Protestant church here in Brazil has a really famous song about the salmon the verse 23.
You guys, and oh, mine must be beautiful in Portuguese. You guys know I like foreign languages. I'm like Daniel. Yeah, I'm always interested to see the different versions. I'm sure they have one in Spanish too. So very nice. So let's continue with our story, and it's actually really sad now. um Jokadeb is in a lot of conflict, as we heard from Daniel. He's having these conversations mostly with his son and doubting, and there's this interesting that happens because as he's in this conflict, he feels like something to go up to his kids and say, oh, I love you, right? So in this embrace that they were having, all of a sudden I can imagine there was probably a knock, a stop. Well, maybe it was more like a force. Now that I'm thinking about it, no, wait, boom, right? You can imagine the door open and the soldiers come in. You all are under arrest. You can imagine. Whew, when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, no, I couldn't. I had to like step back, take a deep breath. So they get arrested, and Giselle does something with his dad, which is super powerful. And Manya shares that he grasps Jokadeb's hand. And in that silence, he's telling him, Dad, you better not say anything because we know that Jokadeb has quite a mouth. So that happens. They are taken. And that's the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2, it's emotional as well, but in a different context. Now they're in prison, and Jokadeb is like silent. He's very humiliated. He's upset. He's probably, he's described as in this like this cloud of grief, and so he lays down on the ground. And just Giselle and Abigail, they go towards the window. They're taking that light, I can imagine, and they're having a beautiful dialogue that is beyond. I'm like, wow, you guys are, yeah, they're strong. They're very evolved for what was happening, and that's kind of like what we're gonna start to talk about that talk because it was very, 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 very powerful. And just to, because I was thinking about their age, Abigail is a little bit younger, so I can see a little bit of that little age gap. And Giselle is the older brother, so you still see that he's taking that role, but they're pretty much on par, I think, as far as the faith. But Abigail starts by saying, hey, you remember the promised land, right? When Moses and the Bible and everything that happened. So she's relating their situation to that. And that's beautiful because we start to see now that spiritism coming in about, where are they getting this from, like this elevation. Here they have a father who is there but not quite there, and then you have a daughter that has all this spiritual knowledge. So again, we can read in between the lines that, the hints of our spiritual knowledge, that our evolution as spirits, right? She also brings up the mom and how she had a way to convince them, and she's like, man, if my mom was here, dad wouldn't be like this. But I'm still not mad at dad. And then she kind of starts to think like, oh my gosh, if I was back home, I wish I could have helped my neighbors, and I didn't quite get a chance because we didn't have the means to do that. And then she talks, okay, no. And there's a reason. I just love her little, she's just going through the emotions, and she goes and says, okay, no, there has to be a purpose for this imprisonment. It's a beautiful thing, right? And then she asks her brother, why are we going through this? Why are we persecuted? What is happening, right? And then finally, you can tell that when as she's having this dialogue, she does have some fear, says, oh my gosh, just so something happens to you, like what's next, and then of course it ends with her dialogue is in love. She's always in this love. So love, that this idea of her feeling all the emotions, I think is beautiful, because even through all of that, it's very elevated, I think, compared to a lot of 18-year-olds. She's about 18. I'm like, wow, that's nice, right? And now we have Giselle, who also is responding. I think the way Emmanuel, and this is just an opinion, everybody might see it different, but I saw him here as that figure, like to support her. It was kind of her taking on the conversation, and he was just like, okay, sister, okay, right? So he also was affirming, you know what, there's a purpose for this. There's precision in us being captive right now. What's the aim at the end, right? Which was beyond. He's also remembering their mother's heartfelt vibrations. But what was interesting is that he not only knew about the memories, but he felt her around her, which again, that spiritual component, right? He also opened up about his dad, the typical dad and son relationship. He was not mad that the dad put them in that situation. Um, he listened to his sister. He admired her a lot and affirmed it. Whenever she said something like elevated, he was always, yes, my sister, and I'm just paraphrasing, but that was really, really nice. And he actually answers Abigail's question, which is good. This is good. Just him taking that lead. And the question was, why does this happen to us, to the children of God, right? To his people. And, to paraphrase, he says, it's because, we give the will, we all have free will, in other words, right? But not everybody follows through. And then he gives that example of, let's say you have kids, the older kids, you take care of the younger kids, and you trust that your older children will help around the house. And when that doesn't happen, that's what's happening now. And then he says, but that's okay. There's a purpose. Don't forget, God, he's here. He's going to teach us love, charity, forgiveness, justice. And overall, he gave examples. God is going to take everyone under his wing, which is absolutely beautiful for him to respond that to her. And then he gives it away. He says, sister, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to take responsibility for the crime, right? And this is a part where she's just like, what's going to happen to you? And he's like, it's all going to be okay. And he references Job from the Bible once again, that spiritual, God-centered home. And they end up, and he asks, just keep me in prayers. And then they end the conversation in this beautiful, like synchronicity. Like they're so in sync with each other. And again, looking at this from a spiritist perspective, getting again the past lives and how we come for a deeper purpose. So that's like the summary. But let's break this apart because there's so much. I was like, oh my gosh, I had to take things off, guys. Just so I'm gonna take a sip of water because here we go. Any comments before? We're good, Daniel. We're good. Okay, so the very first thing, um, in Joka, we're gonna go back to Jokadeb. And Jokadeb, when he was in that lamentation, there's this little line that says here, lost in the inspiring grandeur of the firmament, he felt intense upheavals in his anxious soul. A profound tenderness made him get up and longing to show his children how much he loved them. And then as soon as he does this, they get take him, right? The soldiers come in and take them prisoners. And we have to stop and think, like, there it is, right? As I know Daniel has said, the influence of spirits. This is a good spirit. It could be the mom. Like I said, I'm reading the book with you guys, so I'm not too sure, but at least it's a protector spirit. And this is the stuff that happens. And I know in the spirits book, in question 524, right? The question was, do the warnings of protector spirits conduct as their sole objective regarding our conduct or everything, like our private life? And then the spirits answer everything, right? Protector spirits seek to enable us to live in the best possible way. But sometimes we shut our ears and they're good warnings and we make ourselves unhappy when we don't do this, right? And there's and it says here, one minute, the way that the protector spirits, this is Kardec's comments after the spirits, our protector spirits help us with their counsels through the voice of conscience, right? Which they make they make resound in our inner being. So they're like, ah, right? They're inside our heads. We're still like, and we can see this in Jokadev, right? Because he had a lot of warnings from the Bible when he opens it. So there it is, right? But for some reason, this one, he did it. It was so strong that he went ahead and listened to that voice. So that was beautiful. The next thing that happens is that house. What does that symbolize, right? And Emmanuel makes it a point to describe this beautifully, where it says here, Jokadeb glanced at his flower bed and in his beloved trees next to this little house where he had woven all the dreams and hopes of his life. We know from the beginning of the book, with everything from João, when he described that he went back to the court despite having everything, and then with Daniel's addition, what ends up happening? Jokadeb wants his land back. So he's thinking a house, it's the land, it's the physical, it's the material. But when it comes to everything, when everything was stripped down from him, I think there was like a little part of him was like, my dreams, my family, and everything. And the Bible, go to the Bible, Matthew 7:24-29. Jesus has this parable, the wise and the foolish builders. And Jesus says, let's be like the wise man who built a house on rock, right? So when rain, storms, and anything comes, we're on this rock. Let's not be like that foolish man who builds a house on sand. And so it's for us to start thinking as well as we're building our home. And it's funny because, this American dream, it's the White House, the picket white fence with the dog, with the cat, the dogs, and the perfect job. And we have these illusions. And if we're not there, we feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have a dream. And these are things that society put in a very materialistic way. Because when we think about it, we can have homes that are in apartments with a balcony. She could be two moms, it could be two dads, it could be a single mom, a dad, a grandma, kids of different, adopted, and so many ways. But when we think about a family, that family unit, that home is made from the heart, which I think Giselle was trying to tell the dad, look, we're going to go, if we need to move, we'll take off, we'll go to this other place and it's going to be okay because we're the family, right? Those values that Jesus was telling us, that foundation, that rocks. I thought, that's a beautiful way for us to learn about the symbolism of that house, which is powerful. The chapter ends with Giselle tenderly gripping his father's wrinkled hand. And I'm like, why would you say wrinkled hand? He wants us to stop because that wrinkle wants us to think about the age. And we could look at this two ways. When I was thinking about this, one of the ways would be like it could actually literally be, our parents when we need to. When I was young, I saw my parents strong, and now that they're a little older, I look at them like, wow. I feel like sometimes at one point the roles are going to start to change, right? So this could also be the reminder to be like Giselle, to be, cautious. Just check up on her parents. It doesn't have to be like physical. It is more just checking up, being there for them emotionally and stuff like that. But it could also be from a sense of symbolizing, because usually parents would take that role of the protectors and the children are protected. But in this sense, the roles were inverted. So it means that sometimes it's okay for us to receive the help. It's okay if maybe we even have a friend or a child who is a little bit there for us, to be humble enough to take that, and it's okay to accept the help. So that was one of the things. In the next part, they talk about the prison, chapter 2, and there was something interesting. I'm going back with that. We talked about the contrasts again of the colors and the shades, and it said that the jail, the prison, was very dark, but in there was a little window, had the light. And I think how many times in life we feel like we're in this prison and there's the light. We're always going to have that light. They could have chosen any cell, but this family was placed where light's coming in. So there's a mercy. But if we were to even look at them even further, Jokadeb decides to lay down on the ground. He did not even think of the light. He's like, I'm gonna be like in my grief, right? And you have Giselle and Abigail who go to the window to get that light. And that's where we have that dialogue, right? That's where they're looking. How many times we have a situation, we want to be like Jokadeb. I'm there, like I'm like the first one. It's so hard, right? But we have to try to push ourselves, even though it's very difficult because this family is going through a hardship. Could we be like Giselle and Abigail, see the light, and it was just very powerful. There's in the Bible, since we go back to the Bible constantly, Jesus gave another parable of the salt and the light, right? And he says, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. And so don't put your light, your lamp under, put it where everyone can see. And I think, and he says here, let your light shine. So that's what they were doing. They were letting that light shine. And we need to find it in ourselves to let our light shine no matter where we find ourselves. Let's go to that window. So that was beautiful. The next thing, I'm going to quote Maya Angelou. She has this beautiful phrase that says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. I think that's their mom. And Abigail actually describes the mom, right, in detail. And she says, we don't have the power of persuasion that she had. She always had a way of caring, always enlightening our home. Do you remember? She taught us that God's children must always be ready to carry out the divine wishes. So the memories that they have of that mom, right? So this could be literal if we're in a place where we have children, nephews, nieces, or even students, grandchildren, or we volunteer. Let's make those memories count, because those are the things that when someone's in a hard time, you want them to remember. I'm not sure if people remember. Like I know, because I'm a teacher, and a lot of the lessons, a lot of the stuff I listen to the kids, and they always talk about the memories when they were in the pandemic. It wasn't about the iPhone. It wasn't about everything. It was, oh no, we used to have like dinners together and stuff. So kids do keep these memories, right? But it could also be within our relationships, right? In our relationships, we want to find ourselves making those memories and not focusing too much on the materialistic things. I'm almost done, dear friends. I'm on my last point. I promise. I told you it was very deep. I'm like, Emmanuel he's very deep. In this last one, we're gonna pair it together. because Abby also says, what is this suffering for? You know what? Let's make it worth, let's make it count. Suffering something out of love for God while we're in this world, right? Those who have nothing still have their heart to give. And at the same time, we can cross reference with Giselle saying, okay, what about Job, right? The story of Job. And I'm just going to quote it in case anybody wants to check it out. It's Job chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. And Job, his wife, after Job loses everything, the wife comes and says, are you still holding onto your integrity? Curse God and die. And then Job's like, you're talking foolishly, woman. Shall we accept good from God and not the trouble? And you know what? This pays off because if we know the story, I mean, Job had to overcome a lot of things. I mean, stuff from his skin, all his friends left him. I mean, he was really deserted, and even spiritually, he had a lot of discourses with God. But he made it through, and at the end, he actually ends up getting more than probably he could ever imagine. And I think that Giselle and Abigail, but especially just Saul, because he brings Job. He had already this mentality, right? Even though we're here, we're in jail, let's have Job's faith. Something good is going to come out. We're even going to come out so much better, right? And I think about us too, because I always like to connect to life. Like sometimes we don't understand what's going on in our lives and we limit ourselves, like, oh, nothing ever goes our way. But I think it's our perception, because think about it, when we're on the ground, we see around ourselves. But if we were to elevate, like let's say I live on the third floor, so when I walk with my dog I see something, but when I'm on the third floor on the balcony, like I see so much more, right? And imagine this, our perception with God, it's like, let's lean on God, and then he like takes us to these mountains where we can see so much better. Of course, we know that going to that mountain might be difficult, but it's worth the view. And we lean on God. He has so much to give us, right? And we know that. So we're gonna end with the Bible verse from Paul, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 18. Since we're talking about perception, it says here, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. And this is the vision that Giselle had. He knew trusting in God, it was going to be eternal. If anything, the heart became their eyes, and their heart was very Christ conscious. It was beautiful, friends. I was like, wow. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh, this was amazing. I think Daniel will agree with me. She's on fire tonight. I'm so happy.
I'm loving this book.
I'm so happy you guys brought loads of interesting perceptions. Then the Psalms, Proverbs, Exodus, all those amazing Bible verses, Bible books, amazing. I'm very, very, very happy. A really interesting thing that I want to comment already, so I will not forget, is this receiving signs. So we won't do a couple of things, as we've seen Jacadabs receiving a couple of signs, huge signs, very expressive signs, and on the other side having this huge purpose that needs to carry on, that needs to be fulfilled. And a couple of times, and we've seen, and we go to the Bible again, that when there's this huge purpose, those signs, they will never be enough. And we remember that Judas was advised, he was really, really warned by Jesus himself about the path that he should or should not purchase, and the purpose was much bigger and had to be fulfilled. And as we keep on going with the book, we're gonna see that in their lives, Jazel, Jacadabs, Abigail, the purpose is huge. That's why those signs, they were not enough. They were meant to not be enough. Daniel, do you want to say something, bro?
Or we can just the part that Nora talked about family, right? The family is not the house. And I recalled um, the church is not the building made of bricks and stones. The church are us. Uh, the word ecclesia means gathering, many people gathering with a common purpose. And this is what church means. We are the church and we are the family, no matter what is the structure of the family and who is making part of it, but it's actually the how can I put this? This it's the the affection between everybody that compose the family. It's the feeling. It's what's in their hearts that will uh, structure the family. And so the church, and also I find so strong is that Abigail and Giselle, they represent uh, the ability to put all the knowledge about the divine laws. That let's not talk about the gospel because they don't know Jesus. So the divine laws they are ready to practice put to put it in their actions, in their decisions, in their thoughts. It's in everything they do. As for Jochadeb, he knows he can make a great debate about it, but he can live. He can't. His weakness, he won't allow him to live like the scriptures teach us to do. So this is very important for us to point out. I'm glad, very glad, this part is so instructive for us all.
But even
Yes, it really was.
sorry.
So sorry, dear. You can say. Go
I
ahead.
cannot believe
No, no,
that much.
I finished. I finished.
That's funny. I was saying, after all the talking, I can still go on for oh my god. I'm so sorry, but I did want to say something because of Jokadev, his role, because even though he represents that dark figure, darkness is opportunities for light, and we can't wait to see Jokadev evolve. I guess to use that word, taking away all that. That's I want to say sorry. No.
I think that a really interesting perspective here is us thinking what the sentiment of vengeance brought him and where they could be if he hadn't purchased that, right? They would be at living another life. And again, we do see and think that each thing is on their exact place so the purpose will be fulfilled. And a very interesting question that Daniel brought us when he was explaining was how can we love our enemies? And we see Jakadab really struggling with that kind of feeling. How can I be a good Jew in that case and love my enemy? I think that, and we've talked about that already, but I do think that loving is not about liking or being friendly with one another, but actually humanizing one another and admitting that person as a human being who wants to be respected, loved, and fighting as you would fight for your own dignity. If he had at least thought like that, the result would be much, much different. Another really interesting thing is that the book brings us, and Nora talked about that, this beautiful example of Job. It's really interesting because when we think about a man with that amount of faith, resignation, and we're talking about the Old Testament. Jesus wasn't here yet. We hadn't heard of this amazing Christ that we have, and we have a man with that amount of faith and resignation, and admitting this huge and powerful God in his life that he would fight for and he would love till the very, very, very last day of his life. It's really interesting. And I do think that's why Kardec brings him in the gospel according to the Spiritism, um, because he is this really, really important example for us. And seeing that those Christians would refer to this amazing example of Christ in the Old Testament, it really connects. It really makes sense. It's very, very pretty. Do you guys want to say something else? We're reaching our time here. Norah, Daniel?
I just want to say thank you. Really enjoying it.
Yes, it's really interesting. I'm gonna just say it one more time. We're seeing here love as Jesus brought us this amazing new paradigm for us to have this new north in our lives, and 100% sure that it changes every single thing it does. And we're gonna see this differences more in a more sensitive way while we are going through the book. I'm very happy that you, my friends, are here with me studying. I want to thank you both for those amazing comments, those amazing contributions. I'm very, very happy. Do you guys want to say something before I close the live?
You want to say hello to our friends?
Oh, okay. I always forget this. Let me see the comments here. Where do I? Okay. Our great friend Anna, Daniel's wife, she's here with us. Hi, my dear friend. Wauzinha, where are you from? Me and Daniel, we're from Brazil, and Norah is from United States of America. Yeah, Anna has answered her. Another friend here is Lavec, is with us,
And I saw
posting
Vanessa
a heart. Oh, Vanessa was here. That's
was
nice.
here. Elaine, do we know her?
Yes.
Elaine, and
I don't know. I can see all the comments.
it's
But
okay.
we are very, very, very grateful for everybody that's here with us, posting those so kind comments. We're very happy. Thank you, my friends. We're gonna be here next on Saturday with this amazing book, talking more about those amazing characters that are teaching us so much. Thank you guys so much. I'm gonna close the live here, but it's gonna be saved on Kardec Radio's Facebook page, on Kardec Radio's YouTube channel, Continuum Espírita YouTube channel, Sertão Espírita YouTube channel, So Espírita, our friend Rafael YouTube channel as well. So you guys can watch it later. Thank you guys so much. See you next week.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Thanks, guys. Bye.